Welcome to Profiling Criminal Minds. I'm Dan.
And I'm Sheila.
And this is your, oh, that voice says a lot, weekly coronavirus check-in as we all struggle through this awful year together.
Yes, and that's all you can say.
It's a pretty bad year.
As years go.
Yeah, it's one of the bad ones, you know.
Yep.
It's not worse than the Black Plague years, but it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
The years when the Black Plague was going on, that was real bad. I hear World War I was pretty nasty. You know, depending on where you lived. World War II. Like, there have been some really bad years in the past, but 2020 is going down with the worst of them, gotta say. At least for people here living in North America.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna speak for people living in Japan who seem to have gotten through this whole plague thing without any trouble at all. You know they had, like, no deaths in Vietnam? Like, look at China on a map, then look at where Vietnam is on a map. And, like, nobody died. It's kind of incredible, really. Anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about, of course.
No.
But
No. Yeah, no. Actually, that's what we're sort of here to talk about,
well,
really,
yes,
if you think about it.
Yeah, about how this can have been easy. Like, it's entirely possible that all of this could have been easy. It could have been handled quite simply. It could have been basic, and we all could have had a relatively easy time this year. But we didn't. And I think we all know why that is.
Well, and the problem is, okay.
Yeah.
For example, I can't come and visit you.
No, because huge spike in Ottawa right now.
Huge spike in Ottawa, but I can't come and visit because if I come and visit, when I come home, I'll go into quarantine.
Yep.
If I go into quarantine, it means I can't go and teach my ESL students.
Yep.
That simple.
Yeah.
You know, I have to go into a 14
day. Yeah.
Yeah, if I go to Ottawa.
Yep.
Now, it's very nice. I have my little COVID app that if I test positive, I can put my numbers into if anyone around me. So every now and then it bings at me.
To let you know that someone you've been within 6 feet of has COVID?
Yeah. Well, no, because I live in Sault Ste. Marie.
You're right.
I live up north. So what it tells me is, well, you haven't been anybody near anybody with COVID recently.
Like, yeah, I know. I'm in Sault Ste. Marie.
Well, yes, you know. And,
nobody's traveling to Sault Ste. Marie, so
well, I'm hoping.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I mean, hopefully it stays this way. I mean, we have opened the schools, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens there.
Yeah, I'm very worried about that, as you might imagine.
Yeah, well, again, I'm thinking in the Sioux, it's probably not going to be all that bad. I mean, I think everybody around here, apparently, the Donald has decided Canadians want the borders open.
He's wrong about that.
And I'm going, okay, and where did you hear that piece of malarkey?
Well, his brain, his rotting, decrepit, spoiled cottage cheese brain is what taught him that one. Because no, we want the border to stay just rock solid closed.
People they get upset. Like, people get really upset. I mean, immigration, the border guys had to apologize.
Really?
This week. You probably missed that.
I did not see this story. What happened?
Well, there was some American billionaires, friends of Trump's, of course, right?
Yeah, naturally.
They're billionaires, and I would assume they flew a couple. They're in their 70s. And they flew their plane, I don't know, into Toronto or Montreal or whatever. And they were allowed into the country without doing the 14-day quarantine. They came up here for a meeting or something, right? A conference.
God.
And they were allowed into the country without forcing them into the 2-week quarantine, right?
That's not cool. This is Canada. We have
That's
laws.
not cool. And so consequently, whoever, I don't know who let them in.
Actually okayed it, yeah.
Yeah, who actually okayed it. But the department had to issue uh, a nationwide apology.
I would friggin' hope so. No.
But that tells you, right? That just tells you that no, if they keep doing this, it would remind me of the whole banking. They wanted to change the banking system under Paul Martin.
Yep.
And I think, I think you must have been working on the phones.
I did. And this is a fun thing. I was working phone research. The government was so desperate to change the banking system to make us more like America. This is 2005. I think you can see where this is going. Everybody was making so much money down in America with all of their terrible banking tricks that Canada wanted to get rid of our rules about investment and commercial banks being different things.
Yeah.
And basically, I was out there on the phones every day talking to people and surveying them about this. And I can tell you and I could just talk about the people I talked to, but I talked to 100 people. So that's a representative sample, I think. And 90% of the people, 95% of the people didn't want the banking rules to change.
And I would tell you that and of course you were one of maybe 50 people
doing these surveys. And I'm sure they were all coming out the same way.
Well, no, they did. I mean, because I was in the part of the business that writes up
the reports.
That writes up the reports and writes up the PowerPoints.
Literally the funniest part about it, though, was so we kept doing this thing about banking for, over a year. And so they would come back every 3 months with a new version of the survey,
to see if they
changing the language to see if is there some way we can say this, that it's okay to screw with our banking system. And there just wasn't.
There wasn't.
The needle never moved.
People never moved, and people weren't that stupid.
I know. And that is why Canada didn't get destroyed by the global financial crisis the way everybody else did.
Yeah. There were a couple of banks that did a couple of specious things, but for like the CIBC and Nova Scotia, the two of those were Scotiabank and the CIBC lost an awful lot of money, but outside of that, And
it didn't destroy our whole banking system.
No, because they refused to change. They refused to change the stuff and the rules around investment and the rules around these stupid different things that they had. Oh, I can't even remember what they
financial products, whatever they ended up calling them.
I can't remember what it was called. And when you and if people asked you, and we did have, we did create cheat sheets about all of this, but this is like 20 years ago now.
Yeah, to explain the situation.
To explain what something was, and you'd explain it, and you explain it different ways. Yes, and the government kept giving us, and the banks, a couple of the banks kept giving us, but the banks were pushing the government, and Paul Martin was not particularly opposed, I don't think. I don't know who was, but they kept, and it didn't matter no matter what. So the government said, no, not changing anything.
Clinton got rid of that Glass-Steagall Act, and it destroyed their country. And in Canada, that just didn't happen.
Yeah, and we can't, the Canadian government controls sort of that mortgage thing, so they didn't do those
ridiculous toxic subprime mortgages.
Subprime mortgages. They wanted to be able to do those. You can't do a subprime mortgage, and in fact, every time because I have one property for sale, and the rules have changed because people would make offers, and if the agent didn't like the offer, he wouldn't bring it to you. Yeah. Right. And sometimes people got really pissed off about that, needless to say. And because you never know. And so my agent phones me and says, he said, I really don't want to do this. He said, I got to.
Yeah. Ethically, I have to bring you this.
He says, I have to bring you this. And he brought me this suggestion. Right. He said, well, let me tell you the good parts. They want to keep the tenants there and they don't want to change this. Right. And then he read me the rest of it. And I'm cracking up. All I could do was I just laughed. And all I could do was say, you can't blame a guy for trying.
Oh, no.
Because basically he had already told the agent, she's not going to take this. Well, why wouldn't she? Well, because she's still making money. I'm not selling it because I'm desperate.
You desperately need it. You just don't want the hassle.
Well, it's not just that. I would like to take the money out. I would like to fix up my place. Seeing as I may be living here more.
Yeah.
You'd
like to get your place fixed up. I understand that.
There's a couple of things I wouldn't mind doing here rather than saving money just in case something goes wrong over there,
I hear you.
Anyway, and I have good tenants, so they don't give me any trouble. So, why would I take a dirtbag offer? And it was a dirtbag offer. I just cracked up.
No, but I think, and I mean, it is good that they have to bring the offer to you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that is really a good change, no matter what. But the thing is, I mean, dear America, I'm sorry to have to say this, but, like, we're usually just a more civilized country than you are. And I honestly, I hate to say it, but, after the Civil War, America would not be in the trouble they are now if after the Civil War they hadn't given voting rights back to the southern states. Like, they really shouldn't have. Because, like, look at what a disaster America is, and then look at who votes for that disaster. It's always the southern states trying to make this country, your guys' country, just worse. And it's not like and this is the thing about the South, it's not like you have any ideas for how to improve things. Like, that's the crazy part. These people don't have any ideas for how to, like, improve. It's not like America's in a state where the Democrats think, well, here's how we can improve the country. And the Republicans are like, oh, no, we think you should improve the country this way. One side actually wants to improve the country and, the world. Okay, well, I mean, both sides just want to make money, but one side, at least, it can be forced into doing the right thing. Well, and the other side has no... Oh, sorry. Continue.
I was going to say, what's the line is? Americans always do the right thing after they've done everything.
Exhausted every other option.
Other possibility, right?
Every other possibility.
It's such a good line. Who said that?
Yeah, I don't know whose that is, but it's such a perfect line. But anyway, and it's what gets me about this, right, is that fundamentally, and again, I don't want to sound like I'm piling on, but fundamentally, the problem is America, like, the right there, and I mean, that's to a certain extent to our right as well, it's like they don't have any ideas for how to improve anything. Like, they literally, they have no pitches. They have no, like, well, we could do this and it would make people's lives better next way. All they have is the same three talking points they've always had, which is less regulation equals more freedom, life begins at conception, and essentially America can do whatever it wants, can kill as many people as it wants outside of America.
Well, what's interesting?
That's basically all the American right stands for.
Yeah, and I think what it is, it's easier to say. What happens is that they get elected to dismantle the system.
Yeah.
That's in place because they have persuaded people that there's something radically wrong with the system that's in place.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not perfect. No,
no,
I'm not arguing perfect. That or anything along those lines. But what happens, and so they have all of these promises and all these things they're going to do, and you're seeing it now again with Donald Trump for his second term, is that they get those things done within the first few years, couple of years of their first term.
Yeah.
And then they have nothing else to do.
Yeah.
Like, they can't figure out what to do after that.
Well, and that's my point. They have
no program. They have no program to make people's lives better except for rich people.
Well, of course.
Now, and as it's funny, because when I'm thinking about what's going on in the United States right now, and it has been a horrible week, and and
we'll get into the week
just
in a
let
second.
me go.
No, I'm saying we'll get into the whole week in a second, but continue.
Yeah, but and it topped off with the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, not unexpected, but we had hoped, right? She would last another 6 months.
Yeah.
Now, um, but Canada, I don't know. We've managed so far to dodge a lot of bullets
Yeah.
over the last 30, 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
Because even when the Harper man came in, there was only so much he could do, right?
Well, no, he never had, he never had a mandate from the people.
Yeah,
Like, he just
for a
didn't.
lot of things. Yeah.
For almost anything. Like, he kept winning because of our division between the NDP and the Liberals, right? And so he kept being able to squeak by and win, but he never had a mandate. Like, he never had a plurality of Canadians saying, "Oh, this guy should be in charge."
Yeah, there was never a sweep for him. Let's put it
never.
that way, right?
No, he never had a Jean Chrétien style, "I run this place now" kind of moment.
I run this place because most of you voted for me.
Yeah, well, he destroyed he and the Reform Party teamed up to destroy the Conservative Party. It was beautiful.
Well, what happened and once they were together and not dividing their votes.
Yeah, well, that's a whole other conversation.
Well, no, but that's, part of it. You don't divide your vote, and
yeah,
you can sort of win, right?
That's true.
And it's the same thing right now. And I don't know what's going to happen. We have a new budget coming down. We'll be able to tell our viewers about the new Canadian budget in about 3 weeks.
It's very
if
exciting
anybody cares.
Because
yeah,
I hope they do, because Canadian governance is much more fascinating than I think a lot of people give it credit for. It really is an interesting system of government that we have to get everybody on board with the budget, or the government falls. Like, the government just doesn't exist anymore, and we have to have an election. So
and
it's incredibly high stakes.
And except that nobody really panics when we don't have an election, because the bureaucracy carries on.
Oh yeah, exactly.
We don't have this business of, we have ministers of justice and stuff, yes, but we don't have this massive overturn. And it was well, no, actually, Harper did think that was a problem too, and started to try and change things, but people just kind of quit. Diefenbaker too, who was a conservative from the West. He was a social conservative, though. He's the one that insisted we have to have employment insurance and we have to have Canada pension, and pushed for those things when the Liberals were leading the government in a minority situation.
It's kind of fascinating that even our right-wing people in Canada can see that, no, you have to have some kind of a basic social safety net, or you don't have a country.
Yeah, well, he was a Baptist minister, I think.
Yeah.
At one point, the head of, that's the other thing, the roots of our parties, no matter how people see it, things today, the roots of our party are extraordinarily religious, unlike the United States, because the origins of what's now called the NDP are in what was called the CCF, the Canadian Confederation, or the Confederation whatever of Canada. Don't know why I can't remember, right? J.S. Woodworth. Okay, J.S. Woodworth. But he was also a minister. Tommy Douglas, the head of the NDP and for those of you who are Americans, so you know who Tommy Douglas is, he's Kiefer Sutherland's grandfather.
Yeah.
Okay.
Shirley Douglas was Kiefer Sutherland's mother, and that's Tommy Douglas's daughter.
Yes, and and it's funny. I'm playing this game called Time Guardians right now.
Yeah.
It's just a hidden object game.
Love me some hidden object games.
And the guy has been made to look like Donald Sutherland. Those of you who watch the movie Buffy the Vampire Slayer will know. Such
a weird reference to go to for Donald Sutherland.
I couldn't.
The movie version of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Well, you really want to go Day of the Locusts?
No, I was going to say Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Well, yeah, Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
That's a great
and
movie.
Millions of other things.
Oh, no, I mean, the man has worked for decades and decades and decades.
Yeah.
He's an incredibly prolific performer.
Yeah.
And his son, as a consequence, is, as close to Canada gets to royalty.
Yeah.
We all love Kiefer Sutherland up here because A, he's Tommy Douglas's grandson, and B, he's never disappointed us. Like, he is, like, there was that whole mess where he was engaged to Julia Roberts and all fell apart, but, like, he has been good enough to...
That's been about it.
not have any real scandals for his entire career. It's kind of great, really. Yeah.
And remember, he did make a really good president in...
Yes.
What was it called? Last Man's... It was like...
Designated Survivor.
That's it, Designated Survivor, but it didn't last, and I'm just going...
No. It was a very silly show, but he was good.
Yes, and 24, of course.
Oh, of course, 24. Come on. But yeah, so I think the thing, if you're wondering why we're so just at loose ends this week, it's because every week things get crazier and worse.
And you go, it can't get worse.
Yeah, and you naively think, oh, well, this is the week where it's as bad as it's going to get, right? Like, this is the week where it can't get any worse. No. It can still get worse.
You know what?
Go.
Guess what? Criminal Minds is a metaphor for the state of America.
It just gets worse and worse.
Every season and every episode. I because I'm re-listening to all of these things, and you're going, this is worse. This is the worst, and it's like, and it can't get worse, and it can't get. Just wait.
Every time.
Every freaking season, every week.
Well, and I think this is what
this week was bizarro.
Oh, it was bad. So
and next week is going to be worse. This one, at least, this week, I know.
This week, right? It was rough, right? It was rough because I thought our two big news stories we were going to talk about this weekend were two things that absolutely horrified me this week. One, Bill Barr touring the country, announcing that he planned to, that the Attorney General is supposed to be a political office, and the FBI is supposed to be the political arm, like the political enforcement arm of whoever the president is. And of course, if you're wondering why that sounds familiar, is because he's describing the Gestapo.
Yeah.
He actually said, now I don't swear here, but insert a swear in what I'm about to say, in your head. The man said, like, who do you think the FBI works for?
Yeah.
And I'm like, they work for the law, you absolute blank ghoul. Yeah. You can just put whatever swear you want in there where I said blank. He's a ghoul. Because the whole point of living in a society of laws is that it doesn't matter who the president is. What matters is that everyone follows the law, and the federal government is supposed to impartially enforce those laws.
They are supposed to work for the Constitution.
Yep. They have a constitution. That is what you're in charge of. So whenever Bill Barr says they work for the president, they don't. 100% the director of the FBI isn't supposed to be the president's employee. Like, that's just completely ahistorical. Did
Christopher Wray ever come up to the... I mean, I'm amazed. Everybody was so afraid when he became the head of the FBI that he would be a yes man. Well,
but,
I guess not.
My God. I was shocked at how his own man he is being.
Yeah, he just said,
not
no,
rolling
sorry.
over for Trump at all. Yeah, like he's
sorry, but Russia is Russia, and they're the ones you should be afraid of. And white supremacists are the real terrorists in America. Yep. Oh, okay, Christopher.
The man went in front of Congress, and a Republican asked him, "What are you doing to fight Antifa?" And he's like, "Yeah, Antifa's not a group; it's an ideology. You can't fight an ideology." And I'm like, you can only make a diff. He didn't say this part, but it's true. You can't fight an ideology. You can make a more compelling argument. That's all you can do with ideologies.
Yeah. Whereas white supremacists
are organizations.
Are organizations and terrorist groups.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're just sort of sitting there going,
it shouldn't be jarring to hear the director of the FBI do this, but it kind of is, and it's refreshing. No, Christopher Wray, I mean, I don't know how great a job he's doing, but he's saying the right things in public, and he's clearly pushing the right things to his subordinates.
Yeah, well.
So that's something.
You know, and then Trump comes up with this, well, I think he got it wrong. He doesn't understand. I'm going, oh, my Lord.
I know.
Anyway, so the second thing that really upset you this week?
Okay, so that was the first thing that really upset me this week. The second one was their announcement that they wanted to introduce a patriotic curriculum.
Patriotic education. When you told me, and I missed that. Somehow I missed that. When you told me that, I cracked up.
Yeah, it's insane.
I'm going, you already believe that Willie Horton's The Battle of New Orleans.
I know.
Not Willie Horton's, whatever.
No, Willie, yeah.
Yeah, you know, whoever's Battle of New Orleans tells the true story.
I know.
Yeah.
And now you need... Yeah, sorry, please continue.
No, I was going to say, and Dan says, yeah, just look at a map. See where the Brits were at the end of the War of 1812.
And then tell me who won that war.
Yeah. Plus, the Battle of New Orleans, the war was already over.
Yeah.
The news just hadn't gotten to Louisiana yet.
Yeah.
The war was over.
Had England sent reinforcements, Louisiana would have fallen. Mm-hmm. There would have been no New Orleans. They would have burned it too. But they didn't send reinforcements because the war was over. Yeah.
Right?
No,
so anyway.
They lost that war just harder than anyone has ever lost a war.
And as I said, and then they're going to want to tell you, I know after I started to really think about this and I thought, okay, yes. Okay. Now there has been, and this is part of what it is, what he wants, patriotic education. They don't get it. I mean, because I have met some really smart people in the United States smart people who've had history, who think they won the War of 1812.
Yeah.
Smart people. Like, I'm not talking about people who've had no education or just had high school or whatever.
Yeah.
No. And I'm not even caring that they don't know much about Canada. They don't know much about Mexico or Europe or China or anywhere else because they only teach American history because that's the only thing you need to know. But I'm going, what they want to do is push this thing that the American Civil War was about states' rights, not about slavery.
Yeah.
And that is just, okay, well, I don't call it disgusting. It's just not true.
Oh, no, I mean...
And all you have to do is go and look at the documents. All you have to do is listen to the speeches of these people.
As I think John Oliver said, if it wasn't about slavery, someone probably should have told the Confederacy that. Because they kept saying they were fighting to preserve the institution of slavery as the natural way for humans to exist.
And I mean, I just taught a course, which I've already talked about on our Sunday things. I finished talking a course and we did all these movies about the Alamo. I made them read chapters from books and articles from Texas scholars explaining about the Alamo and about Mexico. And then you watch these movies and you just go, say what? And people will tell you the stories of the movies. They don't tell you the history. Yeah. They don't tell you
that Texas was fighting to turn Mexico, that part of Mexico, into a slave state.
Well, to keep slavery. They didn't want to turn it into Mexico when Mexico became independent of Spain. They outlawed slavery.
And Texas was part of Mexico, so...
Yeah, it wasn't Texas then.
I know.
Okay.
It was the province of Tejas.
And so what happened was, and there were more issues than just slavery because there were other places as well within Mexico that were also fighting the Republican government and Santa Anna. I mean, Santa Anna was not a popular man. No. Santa Anna rewrote his own history too, right?
Oh, yeah.
I'm not saying that the Americans are the only ones that rewrote history, but they have managed to leave out this business of slavery and Jim Bowie, who we've also talked about before,
Mm-hmm.
was a slave and was a vicious, mean
Oh, yeah.
slave owner.
Well, not just slave owner, a slave trader.
Trader.
Like, he literally, Jean Lafitte would kidnap people and turn them into slaves, and he would hand them over to Jim Bowie to sell them, and they split the money.
Yeah, and that's exactly what was going on. So these people were not nice. And the history got changed. And the one book that I've already talked about, on the Alamo, right? And this historian just talks about how he grew up, and he shows you, and the history that he took. He was taught when he was in school, in public school and in high school. And in Canada, of course, maybe we've had lapses in Canada.
Yeah.
But there's a place when I made my students try to write Canadian movies about the West and about that period of time.
Yeah.
I tell you, people did not get off very easily.
Well, the funny part is,
heroes.
I can say for a fact that Canadian education is better. Now, I can't claim that we learned about residential schools. We didn't. And I'm sure the curriculums have changed in the past 20 years since I was in school. But I can say this. I sure as hell learned all about the Métis. Yeah. And what our government did to the Métis. And how Louis they were betrayed, Riel, and what happened to Louis Riel, and how they were betrayed, and how Canada voided all of its deals that it had signed in good faith, and betrayed all of the Métis people. We learned about that. That was integral to part of the process.
And that was part of too. I mean, the whole thing in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick with the Mi'kmaq.
Yep.
To go back, and basically the Canadian government said, just like the Supreme Court said,
it's their land.
That Oklahoma belongs to these Indian groups.
Yeah.
Which as I said, I mean,
fantastic. Yeah, because
it's now, right? We did this 30 years ago.
Yes.
Sometimes 40, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, we were already, and to give Harper his credit, to give Harper his due, he issued the apology.
Yeah.
It was one of the first things.
He wouldn't do it for the residential schools, but he did do an apology for that.
No. He did a full-scale apology at the beginning of his, you've probably forgotten, because everybody, about the residential schools and how everybody apologized, because the Canadian government partnered with most of the religious groups that ran those schools.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Okay. So, and a lot of it was not the sexual abuse. If anybody had known that was going on, but it was beyond anybody believing that would ever happen, right?
Yeah.
That's an even
the
later
volume of sexual abuse happening in residential schools was terrifying.
Yeah. Well,
it's hard to wrap your head around.
Well, it's hard to wrap you, particularly when stuff comes out in Nova Scotia. And look at what happened. It's a wonder Southern Ireland hasn't all turned atheist, or Protestant or something after all of the revelations. But not just the priests, but the nuns. The whole is just a mess in Ireland.
There's no part of it that isn't disgusting enough. Right? What happened in Ireland.
And you sit there, right? But Harper did. He had a big basic apology ceremony, and the chiefs and the rest of it, because I know, because we had a special. We had our biggest auditorium at the university, so that all of the people because the university is built on First Nations land, right? On Anishinaabe, as we call it, land. And so the university, and so we had this big shtick in the biggest auditorium, and we watched the whole thing
That's fantastic.
right? And everybody came in from Garden River, from Batchewana, from Rankin, all of the three big reserves. There were Métis people there, although it wasn't the Métis only got status though, and that's only recent, like in the last 10, 12 years.
Yeah, it was that was rough for the Métis because they were a new culture that was, half a bunch of these tribes and half French. So the government's argument was, well, you don't really have any classical, historic thing to the land because you're a new organization of interbreeding between native tribes and French settlers.
Yeah, you're 400 years old, but that's not old enough.
That's not old enough. You're not one of the First Nations. You're a second nation. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, people.
Yeah, but it was interesting because the Métis, like my family can't claim any kind of Métis status because the Métis are only the French voyageurs and Indian women.
Yeah.
First Nations women, right?
Yeah.
From tribes. So that basically is wherever the voyageurs were doing their fur trading and the rest of it, and they moved out, and so they married essentially
local women,
First Nations women, local women, and had children and the rest of it. And then all of these people, so you find them predominantly in Quebec, like around here, because of course there was a trading post in Sault Ste. Marie. So there's a lot of Métis here. And then of course in Winnipeg and Manitoba, that is big. And the Pékin lost everything. That was a real mess when they finally, you can just see all of the Indian agents that the government would send out. Things became so much worse when Canada became Canada because Sir John A. Macdonald and his Scottish crew had so much power, and they were going to screw over and the English, right?
It was disgusting
because the British Empire, right? And what has happened is, like the Mi'kmaq, for example, ended up getting their rights back because the treaties are there. And the treaties were there before Canada became Canada, and it doesn't matter, they hold. It's the same thing with the Cree in northern Quebec.
Yeah,
and it's
like
the same
these
thing with
legal
others.
agreements were made, and nothing was ever done to void those agreements legally. So they still own that land.
Yeah,
It's
they were just ignored.
Yep.
Those treaties were all ignored. They pushed our people, like they moved in the United States massive distances. No, they just kind of created reserves. So people are still somewhat in their native territories.
Yeah.
But they just kind of moved them into certain reserves and stuff. Like the Missinaba Cree here have finally got land, but it took them ages to get land back. Right? They were a landless tribe, basically.
For the longest time.
The Missinaba Cree. Yeah. And so, I mean, no, it's different here. Yes, there are things here, but it's just different the way we handle things. You see a growing division. I am not happy that the biker house has been opened up again.
Well, now you're getting into very parochial concerns that I don't think.
But that goes because it's the bikers that are mostly white supremacists, and
they're the worst.
It is all of these guys, and then we have that Lord something or other group in Canada, period, every here and there, and and there it's a problem. And then people in Canada, I am constantly saying no. Well, I heard this blah 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 blah. No, okay, let me explain it to you, because everybody has access to the same internet, and while the focus isn't on Canada per se. Right? There's not a big push in Canada as such. We don't, not in the middle of an election or anything.
Nope.
So, but still, I mean, it is a worrying trend that you have to watch and you have to guard against.
Oh, absolutely.
Because there are still people, because you can be pushed when you sit on a certain line. And you have a certain view of how things are supposed to be. You can get easily pushed down that road a little
Yeah.
bit by a little bit. It's just like you can go into the anarchist mode a
Yeah.
little bit by a little bit. You can slowly but surely, because you have to watch where you draw the line, and you have to say, I can't let the line go. And this is what's, I would say, is happening in the US. It's what I complain about, like when we talk, when we do our criminal minds.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just sit there, right? And you just say, and I was just listening to one this morning, and and you're going, well, yeah, but who cares about if they kill it? It was about inconsistency on Criminal Minds and their attitudes towards serial killers and who they try to save and who they don't try to save, right?
Right.
And he says, well, nobody cares. We've got nothing vested in this serial killer. Now it's only a TV show. And I laugh, but at the same time, it is that line. You have to have the rule of law. You have to say, no, you cannot be a vigilante as much as you wish you could and as much as you want to support it. You cannot say vigilantism is acceptable.
No, you can't do what Trump does and says,
but
go out and kill people.
But you see, that's an extreme. It's the little ones, right?
That's true.
Like he's already gone. Like he's beyond the pale. He can't be ever.
Yeah, there is no redemption for Donald Trump.
There is no redemption for Donald Trump. He is going to burn in hell. According to Calvin, he will burn in hell, and that's his roots. So, you're welcome to them, and please burn in hell.
Yeah.
Not that I believe in hell, but if there was a hell, I would like it that he burned in hell.
Yeah. Very few people deserve it more than Donald Trump.
Right now. Yeah.
No, currently in the world. It's basically Putin, Duterte. Oh, yeah. Oh, no. Obviously, I'm talking about living people.
Yeah.
Sorry, I should have made that clear.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Historically speaking, there are people who deserve hell more than Donald Trump.
Yeah.
But you know what? Not a ton. I mean, he is a fascist would-be dictator who would be happy to murder.
And
who has killed 200,000 He's
He's just in the wrong country.
Yeah,
That's why he can't be in the wrong century.
You say he can't be.
I know.
Within a month, he's going to put Ted Cruz on the Supreme Court, and Ted Cruz is going to try to make it so Trump gets to be dictator for life. That's the next month of all of our lives.
Oh God. Anyway, let me go back to the point of really watching the line, and most people don't, and you don't have the religious leaders that you used to have, that for all of the faults of the systems, would tell you that there are lines, and you can't cross those lines. And as I say, as much as like I am a hardcore death penalty annihilator, you cannot kill. I've said this before. You cannot. It is state sanctioned murder. You cannot commit murder against another human being. No. And if you have to pay to keep them in jail for 50 years, so be it.
It actually costs less to keep somebody in jail for 50 years than it does to kill them.
Yeah, but anyway,
it costs more money. No, it's not the point, but it is. It actually does lose people money to execute people.
Yeah, look. But the point is that when you bring everything down to money, you are falling into.
Well, you're the one who brought up the money.
No, I didn't. You said it, money.
You're the one who said you have to pay for them, and that as if it was going to be more of an expense.
No, if you had to pay for them, but the point.
I'm just saying it's also a way to save money is to not have executions.
Yeah. Okay.
No, but the point is you can't start saying you can't start as a government saying this is when it's okay to kill people. You can't start saying it's sometimes okay to kill people. No, it has to never be okay to kill people unless by killing them you are in that moment saving somebody's life. That's the only time it's ever okay to kill someone.
You have your self-defense. You have, you have the guy who's drunk driving his car. Well, yeah, he has to go to jail. But that doesn't mean that he intended. I mean, intention, right? First, you can have levels of murder.
Oh, yeah.
But it means, and you can't even say, okay, I couldn't pull the switch, because there are lots of people who'd be more than willing to pull the switch. You have to say, like I hate to bring it up.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to bring it up, but that's what the 10 Commandments said. Thou shalt not kill.
Yep.
It didn't say, oh, if the state says
Here
it's
are the
okay to kill.
circumstances under which. Yeah.
No. It says, thou shalt not kill. I hate to say it, not being a big Bible fan myself.
But it is right there.
But it is an ethical position, and it is not an ethical position that is, I suspect it's more predominant. I listened to somebody this morning. Michael, of all things, Michael Smerconish was on at 8:00 in the morning. They brought him in, and I guess he's one of their bigger wheels. They brought him in to do the morning show because of Ginsburg.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, and he was talking about, he had somebody on who was talking about the fact that 2/3 of Americans, that basically 2/3 of Americans don't want this conservative rule. Like when you take the popular vote, when you do all of these things, as he said in the last, how many? He said, when you do, it's not just the surveys. And when you go do the down ballot stuff, and I guess, and when you look at, but since, right, Al Gore won a popular vote. Mm-hmm. Hillary Clinton, of all things, won the popular vote.
Yeah.
Right?
Barack Obama really won the
popular vote. And it looks like Biden's going to win the popular vote.
With no trouble at all.
And yet.
Oh, yeah. This terrible system creates a situation where, this terrible...
2/3 of Americans approve of health care.
Oh, yeah. No, it's like they want universal health care. Absolutely. But we end up with this terrible system where a toxic minority gets to control the government because, slave owners put in caveats in the Constitution to ensure that they couldn't, that they couldn't be overruled with their desire to keep owning slaves. And yet when they were doing the Civil War, when they were, rewriting the Constitution after the Civil War, they didn't think to get rid of the Electoral College.
Yeah.
I'd say idiots, but I'm sure that was part of the plan. And that's why I said they shouldn't have gotten their voting power back. It's funny.
Well, yeah, but it wasn't. There's the point. You were attempting to do a healing. Had Lincoln lived, things would have been different.
Oh, completely.
And had the Republicans of all things at that time, those kinds of, or as that guy that I talked about last week said, Lincoln Republicans, had stayed in power, and the federal government had stayed in control of maintaining what was going on in the United States.
It was called Reconstruction, just for everybody.
For everyone. There is actually a huge documentary. It's 2 or 3 parts. I haven't seen the whole thing, but the part that I did see, I'm going to have to go try and find it somewhere.
Yeah.
But it was on PBS, so I saw one of them, and I said, tape all of them, but none of the other parts of it has been on again.
Oh.
But it's a really good look at what happened after the Civil War, because you had initially, but I remember learning all of this. And I went to school a long, long time ago. Obviously, Americans weren't learning what I was learning about the Civil War and about Reconstruction and carpetbaggers. Mm-hmm. Like I knew when I watched Atlanta Burning, what that Gone with the Wind was about. Mm-hmm. These horrible, horrible people.
Yeah. And
it was right that they lost everything because they were horrible, horrible people.
Yeah.
And believe me,
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, it's Gone with the Wind is instructive because if you watch it, they're all pretty terrible people. Yeah. And that was knowingly written at the time. People now have lost the ability to see the context of it. They're like, oh, this is a film lionizing the
South.
The South. I'm like, it is definitely not a movie lionizing the South.
No, are you kidding?
Watch the movie.
Watch the movie closely, and you're going, I don't think this is lionizing. Yes, it's very sad.
That's, by the way, that's like saying King Lear is lionizing King Lear.
Yeah,
Do you
no,
think it's an accident that everything that like, it's a story of misery happening upon these people because they're so arrogant.
Yeah.
Arrogance and surety, like, leads them to every single character to a disastrous, unhappy end.
Yeah.
Nobody has a happy ending in that movie.
Okay, and let's talk Macbeth. That's like saying Macbeth is the hero of Macbeth. No, he's not. Hamlet is not the hero of Hamlet.
These are tragedies.
These are tragedies because these are people who went way beyond.
Yeah, they're flawed people who can't get over their own nonsense.
Go read Tennessee Williams if you want to read about the disaster of the South. Go read Flannery O'Connor. Go read William Faulkner.
Yeah, William Faulkner's the real place to go.
If you want to go and read about the South from white authors, and you're going.
These people did not have, they did not have a blinkered worldview. They were able to completely clear-eyed look at their home and see what was wrong with their home and write brilliant fiction about what was wrong with their home.
Yes, and people have a real hard time with
There's
a
brilliant tradition of Southern Gothic literature. I almost said architecture. Literature that, like, if you want to understand what the South is, you know what? The great novelists and playwrights of the 20th century, they've already done it for you.
Yeah, they've done it for you. You can go, and as I said, and nothing, like, go watch, like it's like watching Streetcar Named Desire.
Yeah.
And saying that Marlon Brando is the hero of that movie. No, he's not. He is a wife abuser.
Yeah.
And
he's a wife abuser and a rapist.
And
he's
a rapist.
Monster. That's the point.
That's the whole point of that. And the sadness of that and the fact that people allow it to happen. I mean, when you read Tennessee Williams' autobiography, and of course he was a gay man growing up in the South, that was hard enough. Right. And that was a long, long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
All of these people, it's like watching, go read but Eugene O'Neill is something else, but go read his Morning Becomes Electra. He's got, and that is his take on Greek tragedy taking place, these family tragedies in the South. It's
it's fascinating because you look at A Streetcar Named Desire and it's not complicated. This is largely like a story about what the patriarchy does to women. It's like how there are incredibly limited things for women to do, and Blanche Dubois is destroyed by that. By society being like, no, this is the only thing you can be.
Poor Blanche, and of course it sends her into the crazy house.
Yeah.
And it's her sister who is married to Marlon Brando.
Yeah.
And
Stanley Kowalski in the play.
Stanley Kowalski, yes, excuse me, Stan. And there's Carl Malden, the nice guy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
In the movie. I'm talking about the movie.
Yeah.
You can read the play.
The play, it's all in there, but the movie's fantastic.
Yeah,
the movie is absolutely fantastic.
And you're sitting there going, no, these are some of the things that they were trying to tell you. These are horror. Go and watch. What's the one with Burl Ives, Elizabeth Taylor, and Paul Newman?
Oh God, what's that called?
Cat in a Hot Tin Roof.
Thank you. Yes.
Go read Cat in a Hot Tin Roof.
Or watch the movie. It's an amazing movie.
Oh, it's an amazing. Yeah. I was going to say, not too many people want to read plays because you have to be able to visualize. So watch the movie and of course, the Paul Newman character is gay.
Yeah, it's about closeted homosexuals in
who's married to Elizabeth Taylor.
Sorry, the 50s. Yeah, who's married to Elizabeth Taylor. Yeah, it's an amazing.
Big Daddy is the white supremacist patriarch of this Southern family
who forces everyone into these roles. I mean, Tennessee Williams was telling it based on his own experiences, and let's face it, telling it like it was.
Yeah.
This is all straight out of his experience growing up in this culture. He was a fascinating writer, and it really does teach you a lot. So, I understand everybody's hopeless right now because Trump's going to try to jam somebody onto the Supreme Court. And so, your job is to, if you're an American who can vote, I'm not talking about fraud here. Don't try to, sneak into America and illegally vote. If you're an American and vote for Biden. He's not a great choice, but he's not a fascist, and that's all America needs right now to repudiate fascism. Like that's your job, America, right now. If you don't want to be fighting in the streets this time next year, if you don't want there to be a civil war next year, just vote Biden. And then we can sort out the rest of the stuff later.
That from a diehard Bernie Sanders.
Exactly. I'm as big a Bernie person as you could possibly get, and I'm just going to say America doesn't need a civil war right now. That's the last thing America needs, so just vote Biden.
You really want Houston to burn?
Well, and someone said that it's like, they had the most insane suggestion for the reason they had to jam someone on the Supreme Court. What if there's a contested election and the Supreme Court has to weigh in, and it's a tie? What'll that do? And it's like, yeah, do you know what's going to be worse than that? What if there's a contested election and Trump loses the votes by like 5 million in the popular vote, and then the Supreme Court weighs in, and a person he put on the court and 3 people that he put on the court say he gets to keep being president even though he lost by 5 million votes in the popular vote? Do you know what's going to happen then? There's no America anymore. So it's just a fact. Like, the Supreme Court will have zero legitimacy, and the problem is, once the Supreme Court has zero legitimacy, right, then
the whole
the Constitution,
system falls
the system's
apart.
gone. The Constitution doesn't have any legitimacy if the Supreme Court isn't backing up. I mean, there's no country anymore if Ted Cruz and Kavanaugh and whoever the third guy is
Ginsburg.
say Donald Trump. No, the third guy, the first guy Trump put in.
Ginsburg, Neil Ginsburg.
He's not named Ginsburg. Ginsburg just died.
Neil Gorsuch.
Yes.
Gorsuch.
Yeah, Neil Gorsuch.
Sorry.
Like, if
I'm
those
sorry.
3 guys, it happens.
Neil Gorsuch.
Neil Gorsuch. If those 3 guys say Trump gets to keep being president, even though he obviously lost the popular vote, and the only way they would get to do it is to by stop the counting of the vote, counting of various votes, which is how Bush was installed.
Yeah.
Thanks for that, Sandra Day O'Connor. Anyway.
Yeah.
Well, she wanted to retire. Don't you get it?
Yeah.
She wanted to retire. So she's just like, I don't want to have to wait another 4 years to retire. I'll just let Bush be president. How badly could it possibly go?
Well,
You're
thank
the
you,
worst, Sandra Day O'Connor. But anyway, the point is.
But what happens? Yeah.
So what I'm going to say is, and I know I'm not going to get into whether abortion is murder, blah, 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 blah. I know people want to get rid of Roe v. Wade. And that's why they want him to stay and be able to pick a third Supreme Court. Like, I get that that's what you want. And I don't know if anyone listening to this wants that, but I'm just going to tell you something. We're not going to get into whether abortion is murder, blah, 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 blah. We're not going to get in the fact that, the only time the Bible mentions abortion, it's only once. Well, no, but it's only once. And it's the ritual you're supposed to do to perform an abortion. That's the only time it comes up in the Bible.
Well, no,
is a pro-abortion thing.
Well, yes, and then there is an Old Testament thing about what happens and how much somebody has to pay.
No, but that's about a miscarriage. Yeah. That is about a miscarriage.
Yeah. It's about if you cause a miscarriage.
If you cause, what you have to pay if you cause a miscarriage. Yeah. But I'm saying the only actual mention of an abortion is the ordeal of the bitter herbs. And that is essentially just the ceremony for how to perform an abortion. So, no, that's the only time abortion's mentioned in the Bible, and it's not against it. And for women that you think have been unfaithful. The Bible's terrible in a lot of ways. But anyway, the point is, I'm just saying we're not going to get into the abortion thing here.
As she brings it up.
I know. I'm the worst. I agree. All right. But I will say this, and this is something I want you to think about before you support Trump and all of his crimes and evil. And again, how are we even questioning whether he's going to be president again? His incompetence has led to the death of 200,000 Americans. And 40% of the country's like, yep, I want more of that.
Yeah, I want more of that. And
I want more
yeah.
dead Americans. But anyway, the thing that gets me, right, is, and this is what you have to remember if abortion is what you're voting on. I know you think you want to get rid of Roe v. Wade, but the problem is abortions have dropped precipitously since abortion became legal. That's a fact. You can look it up. The number of abortions in America became lower after it was legalized. And this is because, quite simply, once abortion is legal, people start taking women's health care seriously, and women can get birth control.
More birth control.
More birth control, which means less unplanned pregnancies, which means less abortions. And it's as simple as that. If you get rid of Roe v. Wade, you're going to have an attack on women's health care providers, the likes of which America hasn't seen since the 20s. And suddenly women won't be able to get birth control anymore. And suddenly there's going to be a lot more abortions.
And that has already been happening in a lot of places.
Yes.
They closed down the women's health centers.
Yeah. Then you're getting more unwanted pregnancies and you're getting more unsafe abortions. It's happening right now.
So, I mean, you have to watch, you just have to watch that. And all I can, and if I wanted to say is, there is this whole thing, right, in the Christian right community called WWJD.
Yeah.
What would Jesus do?
The what would Jesus do necklace.
Okay, I have adapted that for other things too.
Of course.
Okay. And all I can say is
popular meme.
Let's go read about forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go read about he who is without sin. I mean,
casting the first stone.
Cast the first stone. Well, nobody is without. And as we know from the Jerry Falwell Jr. episode.
Oh my God.
Really
not without sin. Yeah. And the thing is, this is where I'm like, do I have too much empathy? Because I saw that story this week about him getting so drunk in his house last month that he fell down the stairs and smashed a liquor bottle against his own face, cutting himself up and bleeding everywhere. And he had to call his wife to come and get him because he didn't want to call 911 because then there would be a news story about him falling down drunk. But the problem is he and his wife have split up. I mean, they haven't made it public, but they have. So she didn't have keys to the house where he was drunk at the bottom of a staircase, bleeding badly. So she had to smash in the French doors of the house to get in to see him. And then she called 911 and tried to get walked through how to give him first aid without saying who it was on the phone because she didn't want there to be a news story about Jerry Falwell falling down drunk and his wife having left him. So yeah, he's a terrible human being, but I actually feel sorry for him.
Well, let me put it this way.
Yeah.
I guess I feel less sorry for him. I'm going, yes, you reap what you sow.
It's true.
And he has been living a lie. He has been making millions of dollars.
Yeah, you're right.
Out of a lie. He has
hurt so many people. I know.
Just look at everything. He and his father and everything about Liberty College.
Yeah.
Okay, you can laud everything that you want about their attitudes towards sex, and you can think that that is just the perfect solution to everything. And then you have this man who is, taking, but I don't like, I'm really
who literally pays young men to have sex with his wife.
And using some of the women from that university.
College. I know.
That college. And I'm going, it's not just, okay, you want to do that, that's fine, but don't come out and be holier than thou.
I know.
And don't come out there and start supporting this idiot, and talking about forgiveness. No, forgiveness demands that people change. And if they are not changing, and falling down drunk and cutting yourself with one of your whiskey bottles is not changing. It is not dealing with your guilt. It is not saying, I was wrong. And I am going to live in sackcloth and ashes. And I am going
Until
to
I make
give
this
back
right.
the millions of dollars that they were going to pay me out. So
Yeah,
I
you're
don't
right.
have to live this way. No, I mean, if he wants to do it,
If
and
he
what
wants
was,
to actually live it, yeah, you're right.
if he wants to live it,
Then we can
then
feel
he
sorry
lives
for
it.
him. Yeah,
Then
you're
he
right.
lives it. And he's not living it. He's, he
No.
fought it.
He
He,
wants to keep all the money, and he wants to keep all of his position, and blah 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 blah. I know, you're right.
sorry,
I'm
yeah.
naive. No, I'm naive about that, but I can't look at a person suffering and not feel empathy for them. I
Well,
literally can't do it.
I can,
No
I
matter
can
how little
feel
he deserves
sorry,
it.
except
Yeah.
that I have spent way too much time helping people who are addicts. And the one thing you have to
Yeah.
come up with is like, I mean, maybe it's my own upbringing. Okay. There's no question that my parents were very rigid about certain ethical, like just there was these ethical hypocrisy was the thing that neither one of them could stand.
Yeah.
And if you ever accused one of my parents of being a hypocrite, that was probably the worst thing you could ever. I can remember screaming at my father once. Yeah. So, and I won't even tell you what I was screaming at him about. It had nothing to do with sex. So,
Yeah.
yeah, as his line was, well, my sisters, sowed their wild oats. Like it,
Yeah. That's not the important
and
part
they
of
ended up all right was his line, right?
the
As far as that was concerned. No, it was about something else. And I looked at him and I said, and I said, it was like, so do you see yourself as a loser? And he just looked at me and he said, no. Said, okay,
Oh my
let's
God.
talk. Right?
Yeah.
No, hypocrisy is the worst.
It is.
People think that I'm get too hard. You got to tell the truth, and
No, you're right.
you have to be responsible for your actions. And when you've screwed up, you have to say so. And
Yeah.
most people can't. And
No,
most
and I mean
people can't.
America right now, like
And
you,
America is
it's
classic. Donald Trump is the epitome of that.
yeah, of an unwillingness to take responsibility for your
For
actions.
anything.
Actually, he literally has said, I mean, I wish I was exaggerating or we lived in a time where I didn't have to say this, but Donald Trump literally said to a reporter, I don't take responsibility for anything.
Yeah.
And people want him to serve a second term.
Yeah. And that's it is just
It's insane. It's madness. But here we
it's
are.
madness, and we can only end with as I
Okay.
posted, too sad
Before-
to comment.
Yeah.
Too sad to
I will tell you all something fun before we move on to my recommendation this week, which I think everybody should watch. I will tell you all something fun. So this week, a man had to step back from the CDC, right? His name is Michael Caputo. He had to step back from the CBC because he went on Facebook Live and gave a deranged speech about how the deep state had created coronavirus and they were sending assassins to kill him. And you're like, dear God, what is happening? Right? So he had to go. He was so bad. I mean, how bad do you have to be that you get to put on a leave of absence from the Trump administration?
Well, no,
I mean,
and
it was this and the guy who was literally Trump's body man, who was an inveterate gambler and owed hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like, that's how bad you have to be to get kicked out. But anyway, so just for context, this is why I think it's important everyone hear this story. So this man, Michael Caputo, through the 80s, worked with Oliver North on the whole Iran-Contra thing, doing communications and helping fascist dictatorships in Central America deal with their messaging to their people. Like, and making sure the American side of the story was being told. That's what he used to do. And do you know what he did after that all went to hell and a bunch of people went to jail?
what?
He moved to Russia.
Oh, I think I might have known part of this. He moved to Russia.
And here's the best part. When in Russia, he credits himself and his website and his consulting firm really did with arranging the re-election of Boris Yeltsin. And a lot of people don't know this part of Russian history. But Boris Yeltsin was reelected, and here is how he was reelected. He was deeply unpopular, he was a falling down drunk who no one had any respect for, and he was thought to be incredibly corrupt. So basically, he had no hope of getting reelected, unless people poured untold millions of dollars into his election campaign and ran the first American-style election campaign in Russia with an unbelievable spigot of money. And the only people who could do that were the oligarchs, who had bought up all of Russia's industry after the fall of the Berlin Wall, and USSR broke up. Now, these oligarchs wanted to put their guy in, and then they would just puppeteer him and run Russia forever, and he would privatize everything, right? And Yeltsin was their guy first, but then the second Yeltsin got reelected, his second in command was like, okay, yeah, but you're very sick, so you should probably retire and I take over. And that second in command? Vladimir Putin.
Of course.
And then what Vladimir Putin did was he said, hey, oligarchs, remember how you thought I was your puppet? Yeah, instead you all work for me, and I'm going to start throwing you in jail and seizing your assets until you agree you all work for me. And he quickly got them to agree they all worked for him. And so he took over Russia. And Michael Caputo's reward from that was an ungodly big, for his part in helping Putin take over Russia, was an ungodly big contract to lobby to make America like Russia and specifically Putin more. So he's the one who, after 9/11, was in America going to all of the the rich people dinners in Washington, D.C., talking about how great Putin was and how he's going to be our ally in this war on terror, and helping convince George W. Bush to meet Putin in the White House and say, I looked into his eyes and he's a good man. That's all Michael Caputo. And he went to work for Trump, trying to destroy the CDC.
Well, you know what the thing about Michael Caputo is that I remember, like, he was already scary, weird at the beginning.
Oh yeah,
right.
He was already
because he used to be on CNN. He used to come on to be the Trump guy on CNN. Mm-hmm. But slowly, and as I say, this is when you start going down that slippery slope of nutdom.
Yeah,
that's where you end up. I mean, because it wasn't just that. It wasn't just that the deep state. He was saying the CDC was committing sedition, and it was just like, and you're listening to this and going, what you got there was this highlight, because all of this stuff, right, that he says, you see it. I mean, every now and then from these weird people that I do know and who haven't figured out that I don't really want this stuff, and I don't want to hear it, and I will fight you if you really insist on it. But I have cut people out of my life now because there's just no way. But yeah, I mean, and they put together these weird memes that are just gobbledygook.
Oh yeah,
and it really is true, but it sounds good and it's slick. And people, and you buy a little bit of this, and then you buy a little bit more, and then you buy a little bit more. And pretty soon you find yourself in hell. And I don't know. And if, and enough people do this, it's not like this is the first time in history. It's not like that all of this stuff, it always goes on, but you have to have some kind of a check against it. You really do, because otherwise, people we're all going to end back in the Middle Ages or something. And God help me, at least there weren't that many slaves in the Middle Ages, I'll tell you.
I know. Well, and I mean, the thing is, it's like, well, no, I mean, Margaret Atwood, she's got it. Handmaid's Tale. That's what Pence wants. So that's what they're going to try to take. That's what they're going to try to get done. And Trump, as long as he gets to be the king of it, he doesn't care what kind of country he's the king of. He just wants to be the king of a country.
Yeah, he just wants to be king.
Yeah, he just wants to be king. And he wants to rule for as long as he's alive. And, then his family takes over. And then, there's never any questioning the Trump's rule or the Trump's rule or the Trump's authority. It's absolutely disgusting, of course, but what are you going to do?
Yeah, well, I mean, I just don't want that kind of a mess in Canada,
No,
and
of
we
course.
have to guard against it because, I mean, this stuff,
It can be
it's the
tempting.
problem. It's the problem of the globalized world, and we live
Yeah.
in a globalized world, and it's the problem of the internet. And I will not tell you that I want to get rid of the internet because I don't,
Yeah.
but it
But the
is.
internet has caused as many problems as it has solved.
Yeah, but that's all the way with new technology. I mean, that's the historical voice in me is telling you, yeah, but it will all come out in the wash until the next time,
I know.
um, because that's just the way it works. We are entering this massive, like I can understand why people don't want change,
Yeah.
because that's what this is all about. People are just so scared, and they don't want all of this massive change that not only globalization has brought about, because that's what
Mm-hmm.
this is, but globalization has been going on ever since the beginnings of written history. And
Oh yeah.
anytime civilizations, you see them expanding, expanding, expanding. Like you get, like, anyway, never mind. I'm going to start teaching my lesson for
I
Tuesday.
know, right?
Um, but what happens, right? It you can just see it, and we are now. This is something new. The
It is.
internet, the globalized world, and we need a new way of looking at the world, and that is hard. And so the resistance to that kind of change can be very, very bad. I mean, I go back to the Reformation period, because that's, in some ways, this feels sort of like that, where all of these groups, all of these small little groups are fighting with one another and killing one another. And like, we haven't seen massive killing yet in the US, but
But
they're doing
yeah.
all of this sort of stuff so that they, some because they want this extreme change, or they want all of this to change. It has to. And then you have the Catholic Church that finally, who is the arbiter of the way things used to be, right? Tradition. And
Mm-hmm.
everybody should go watch Fiddler on the Roof, just for that song, right?
It is the
And
best.
and and it is a problem. It is scary looking forward when you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, it is, when I think, I've been watching some of these old things, like not even that old. They're 20 years old, and you look at the phones
I know how
20
fast. I
years
mean,
ago. And
all
when
of us
I
having a computer in our pocket happened really fast.
look, and when I was little, what, you had party lines.
I
I mean, it
know.
was amazing that, in the Sioux, we actually had our own line. But if you moved like 10 miles out of the Sioux, people were all on party lines,
Yep, where
you know,
literally 10 different houses would be on the same phone
on the same phone, right? So you could listen to your neighbors if you could manage to pick up the phone and nobody could
without them
hear that
hearing
you
it.
picked the phone up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Conversations and things like that. And then you look at computers, you look at
I know.
cable, you look at all of this stuff. Like, it is, in some ways, it feels too fast. It feels like the Industrial Revolution did. It
Yeah.
feels like the
And in
Reformation.
the same way that we had Luddites, then
Yes.
we
And they
got
used to go
people,
out and smash
a
factories
machine. I know.
and the rest of it. I mean, because people didn't want, because the whole world was going to go to hell in a handbasket and everything else. And I mean,
That's
Trump and
also when
his
we got the
crew,
Mennonites.
the crew that follows Trump, hit that 40% believes that
Yeah.
everything has to stay the same, or
Yeah.
some idealized father knows best, leave it to Beaver world that never
Version of the
existed,
past. I know.
version of the past, right? And they're scared, and they're scared, scared, scared.
Well, I mean, and that's the thing. The fundamental part of all of this, and it's like, as you're going to watch the news, it's going to seem like everyone is trying to scare you right now. But the problem is that one side wants to scare you because that's how they stay in power, and the other side is trying to scare you because if those people get to stay in power, things are going to get a lot worse for everybody. And that's the bad situation, where it's like now, because normally the Democrats get to run on hope and their ideas for the future, and the Republicans get to run on everything's scary, just hide in your bunker, daddy will handle things.
Yes, with
right?
your guns.
With your guns, obviously hide with your guns. But the problem is now, America is in a state where Democrats have to be scary too, because that's how bad the opposition is. Well, so we're gonna wrap this up now, but I'm gonna leave people before we move on to the suggestions with one wonderful thing, which is I have been saying I never got into Harry Potter because I was too old when it came out, but if it was very good, I'm sure I would have read it. But I tried reading it once, and I found that it was full of creepy crypto Nazi stuff. Like the Jewish goblins who run the banks and using, white supremacist terminology like mudblood. Like, it's just like she seemed like a terrible person. So I didn't want to read her book. And not only have I been vindicated with all the turf stuff, but I found out the best thing this week that is going to allow you personally, and I hope everyone, to completely dismiss J.K. Rowling as a human being from here on out. So she writes books secretly under a man's name, and then they weren't popular, so she told people it was her writing them. It was a real Saddam Hussein type of situation. That happened with Saddam Hussein, long story short. But anyway, do you know what the pen name she picked was?
What?
And I just found out this week. And it's like, if we had known this 5 years ago when we started doing this, we would have all turned on her then. The person she picked to be her pen name is the psychiatrist who invented gay conversion therapy.
So
Robert, because the real guy's like Robert Galbraith Hayes, and she calls herself Robert Galbraith. She's always hated not anything non-cis, non-straight. Yep.
And if she has built her entire empire on that, then we are not amiss to wonder whether or not the lady protesteth too much.
Well, that's a whole other conversation. All right, so I'm going to recommend everybody watch, and this is an easy one to recommend because it's timely. Go watch On the Basis of Sex. It's fantastic. It is the movie it's a biography of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and it tells the story of her from when she was in college and decides to go to law school, right up through her landmark equal rights lawsuit that essentially rewrote American law and made equality between the genders a fundamental bedrock principle in American jurisprudence.
By defending a man.
By defending a gay man. It was fantastic. It's an amazing story. And that's the genius of it, is by showing that men were getting the short end of some sticks, she was able to overrule the whole thing. And it's an incredible movie. It tells it so well. It's one of those movies where it's 2 hours long, but it just flies by because every part of it is just so interesting. So, fantastic story, beautifully told. The performances are incredible. Everybody needs to see On the Basis of Sex.
And where is it?
I saw it on Netflix. I don't know if it's still there, but you can rent it on YouTube if it's not available.
Yeah.
Anywhere you're streaming, because it's just a magnificent movie. And again, she is one of the most important civil rights figures of the past 100 years. And it's a perfect time to remember her because we just lost her yesterday. Well, 2 days ago when you hear this, but that's not important.
Yeah.
Do you have hopefully as uplifting a pitch?
No, I think I was going to say I don't have as uplifting a pitch. I think
then you already do.
This is it.
No, I was going to say, go double down on what you just said. Tell people to watch Fiddler.
Yeah, go watch Fiddler on the Roof. About how somebody. I mean, this takes place in, of course, Tsarist Russia, and then
fictionalized a shtetl in Tsarist Russia.
In Tsarist Russia, and then how everything is changing, and then the revolution is coming, and how they all have to move. It's a musical, but you want to watch that original one. the music is wonderful. The story is wonderful. And it's, it even the whole deal, he's got 4 or 5 daughters and of course has to arrange all their marriages. And at one point, he asks his wife, because marriages were arranged, right, by a Yente. And he asks his wife, I mean, it is actually a great song. I mean,
Do You Love Me?
Do You Love Me?
It's an amazing song.
And she has to sit there and think about it. And,
is that something we're allowed?
Well, I guess after all these years, I do.
Yeah, it's a beautiful song.
Yeah, it's
just a beautiful movie.
Yeah.
Like, it really is. Topol plays Tevye, the lead. He's fantastic. I mean, it really is. It's an incredible movie, and I think everyone should check it out. So we're going to be, it's BTW. It's 3 hours. So just get ready to settle in.
Yeah, just settle in. There is an intermission.
There's an intermission halfway through, but
part of those. And there is nothing, because everything else, like I just watched just and I thought, well, I sort of like this film, but at the same time I watched 3000 last night. He said, go watch something, and I was going to watch Inception, but I didn't. I watched 3000 Miles to Graceland.
It's just a silly movie
with Kevin Costner and
Kurt Russell
and Courtney Cox. Courtney Cox, right? Well, I mean, it is a silly movie. I mean, there is no question about
so much
it.
Fun.
It's just a fun movie, but all of these people get killed, and it's like there's so many things that are ethically wrong with it. It's like watching Smokey and the Bandit, and it's horrifically violent. And it's like watching, as I said, like watching Smokey and the Bandit, except nobody dies in Smokey and the Bandit.
That's true. They're just a bunch of dirt bags.
Yeah, just a bunch of dirt bags. And they're all dirt bags. And I'm going, I'm not sure I really want to suggest that. No, Fiddler on the Roof, I think it is something that will soothe the soul. If somebody needs their soul soothed, it is one of those movies.
Mm-hmm. No, that's exactly right. Okay, so we're going to end it here. Thanks for joining us in this therapy session.
Yes.
We hope you learned a little about Canadian history, and Canadian history is much more fascinating than Americans have been told. It really is.
Or than Canadians have been told.
Or than even Canadians have been told. It really is an amazing story how we got to where we are now, and we're still working on it. But we will see you back here Thursday we've got to be close to wrapping up season 10.
Oh no, you know what we're doing on Thursday?
Oh, have we ended season 10 and we're doing
we start
between?
Season? No, we've already done. What went up on Thursday was The Alienist.
Oh, I love The Alienist.
Okay.
So excited for Angel of Darkness.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. It's supposed to be coming out soon.
Yeah, so fingers crossed. But yes, so we're going to start season 11, which, our last season with Thomas Gibson. So enjoy it while you can, people.
Yeah. And the fact that we say all the time, geez, this is getting so bad. And, this is getting bad. Just remember.
Yeah.
Next week, it'll get worse.
It really is a terrible season of television.
And I can only say, there's another thing. The only thing I can say is that I'm teaching Tuesday nights. Yeah. So I will not be tempted to watch the debates, which will drive me crazy if I watch them. I will not be able to watch the election until after I finish teaching. Yeah. So, it may not be over, but till about 10 o'clock at night. So
that's good. There we go. Little baby steps to keep yourself.
Steps to keep yourself happy.
If you have any questions, if you have any suggestions for fiction we should recommend to people, drop us on profilingcriminalmind@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. We will see you. Oh, yes. If you're listening to this on some sort of an app or podcatcher, be sure to rate and review it, because that's how people find the show. We will see you back here on Thursday for that, and next week for whatever hell America has descended into.
Yeah.
in the next week. But until then, I'm going to say au revoir.
And have a good week.
Profiling Criminal Minds is a member of the Kinks Podcasting Network.